Hello, friends. I'm James, and welcome to episode number 102 of Nostalgia Talk, the very last one of the year 2024. Before I get started, a lot of the time on this show, I like to talk about the people in my life. I love my friends, and I love spending time with the people in my life. Like I always say, they're there for a reason, even if it's just a casual, oh hey, how you doing? Like if it's somebody you've never met before, hey, they probably appreciate it. And very sadly, in my group of people, we've had another death. The Nova Scotia film industry has lost an incredible collaborator, a very passionate leader, just somebody who knew the craft so well, Spencer McKay. I didn't really work with Spencer on anything, but we'd see each other at like screenings and events. He'd come into the rental place that I worked at when I started in the business. I met him my first day of college. He had just graduated the program I was taking, and he talked to us about what he got out of it. And weeks later, we saw one of his short films at the film festival that year. That taught me how passionate he was about his craft, and like he never let anything get in his way. That's always the way that I thought of him. He had his challenges, but he was always so passionate about going forward. And, when I'd see him at these screenings, we'd talk about the things we just watched. I remember going to a Pixar movie and he's talking about the director, Pete Docter. And I said, yeah, I've met Pete. And he was just like, wait, what? He wanted to know all about that. It was just, yeah, he was just a great listener. And, I think when it comes to Spencer, again, I didn't work with him on anything, but that's the thing that I'll miss and will always remember. So I am dedicating this episode of Nostalgia Talk to a great collaborator, Spencer McKay. So now let's get on with the show. Let's give a big Nostalgia Talk welcome. The 2024 finale guest is our Brandon Johnson.
Hey there, James. How are you?
I am well. And you?
Doing good. Coming to you from, a sunny Los Angeles day behind me, though it's a frigid 58 degrees.
It's
sure
it's like 2 degrees here, but the sun is out. I mean, like we're expecting a lot of -2 days next week.
There you go. I'm from Minnesota, so I know the cold.
Oh wow. Yep. So for anybody who doesn't know, Brandon is an actor who a lot of us probably remember from Disney Channel. He played the role of 2 TV hosts. On Hannah Montana, he recurred as Brian Winters, and he played the regular role of Gary Wilde on Shake It Up, and was also an actual television host for the TNT reality show series 72 Hours. He also played the role of Michael McBain on the soap opera One Life to Live, and appeared on sitcoms such as Third Rock from the Sun and also Good Luck Charlie.
There you go. Mm-hmm. That's right, sir.
Mm-hmm. So to start off, let's go a little bit back in time, really nostalgic here. How did you become interested in acting in general?
Sure. Well, I think part of it really began when I was a young boy. I grew up an only child, and kid of the 80s. I spent a lot of time alone. I was with myself most of the time as my mom and dad were working. And so from the time about 6 years old on, I just found new and creative ways to entertain myself. And sometimes it was safe, and sometimes it was dangerous. But for the most part, I did find myself
how dangerous it can be.
Yeah. Well, I had a fascination with fireworks, so I used to blow a lot of stuff up. I don't recommend. But anyways, I did spend a lot of time in my room in front of a mirror, coming up with weird characters and finding different voices and learning how to mimic and do impressions and things like that. And as my life went on, I was a bit of a class clown, things like that. And so it just sort of came naturally to me. But I will say, sometimes I can be uncomfortably extroverted and then sometimes painfully introverted. It's a strange dichotomy that I've swam through my whole life. But with regards to acting, I think my first real play was right around, I think I was like in 4th grade. And I did like a Christmas play, kind of on a whim. A teacher of mine had recommended me to do it. I did it. I got done. They came up to me and they said, you may want to consider pursuing this a little more. And I thought, well, maybe, I don't know. Now, at the time, as I said, I grew up in Minnesota, And my whole focus was really on hockey. And that was a really big thing that I did for the first 18 years of my life, and traveled all throughout Canada, all throughout the United States, played on various all-star teams. And that was really going to be my
Nice.
life. But it wasn't really until I got into college where I decided to lean into doing theater, and started at the University of Wisconsin. I became a comprehensive theater major. And there, you don't just do acting, you learn how to do makeup, directing, scenic and lighting design, stagecraft. I mean, it's all of it. At the time, I was like, man, I should have just been a brain surgeon, because the amount of stuff that we were doing was outside of class, was just an enormous time suck and a dedication. And simultaneously, I was playing in a band. I'm a musician, so I've been playing drums for 30 years, and that was a really, really big passion of mine as well. So for some reason, being on the stage and being in the spotlight seemed like home in a strange way. And really, it wasn't until I got done with college and sold my Camaro and bought a one-way ticket to New York City and landed there. The pulse lit me up, and I was determined to make something of myself. And so I originally went there to pursue music. I was pulled out there to play drums for a band, and that went sideways one day before I was about to leave. And then I joined a different band with a guy named Michael Hilfiger, Tommy Hilfiger's family member. And there was a lot of like exciting things happening with that. But as it turned out, over lasagna one night, my drumming idol, Jimmy Chamberlain from the Smashing Pumpkins, was there. He had actually been kicked out of his band for a moment. He heard our demo, and I was fired over lasagna, and he took my place. And so in that moment, metaphorically, I threw my drumsticks into the garbage, and I went full force into acting. I put blinders on like a Clydesdale, and I just really kind of told myself that nobody would affect kind of my future and my drive in that way. And I began the dive into being an actor in New York City by doing anything and everything, every horrible job, working for free, whatever it took to build my resume, get a reel going. And, you know, it was, well, there was moments where it was a bit humiliating at times, but I was willing to do what it took. And so the drive really kept me going, and eventually, you know, got representation, and then started getting out for some of those legitimate paying jobs. And, you know, and 23, 24 years later, here we are. So quite a journey.
So that's cool that you studied like really hands-on stuff when you were in college. Like my program was very much like that. You know, everyone had their thing that they wanted to do, but we all got a chance to do a little bit of everything. Of course, your focus was into acting. We got each other to act in a lot of our student films, but eventually it's like, we're not studying acting. You're studying how to work behind the scenes. So
1,000%.
Yeah. So we ended up actually getting real actors with our actors union to work with us on that. So when you were in college, did you ever do any plays? Like, was that something that happened when you were in college?
I did. Yeah, absolutely. I would vacillate by doing, I did one of my favorite plays that I did. I mean, I did a lot of the classics and stuff. But one of the favorite, and just it's kind of timely right now as we move towards the holiday season and into Christmas. I did a play called Inspecting Carol, which was originally created out of the Seattle Rep, their theater program many decades ago. But it's a spoof on the Christmas Carol. It's kind of like this motley crew of theater actors that are trying to put on the play The Christmas Carol, and everything just goes sideways. And it's a lot of physical comedy. And it's still one of my most favorite plays that I've ever done. It's a ton of fun. And so, yeah, you know, it really kind of just got my feet wet. But as I said, then, and to what you were speaking about, you know, understanding the comprehensive experience around making films or acting in general, I think it's imperative that you understand what's going on, not only in front of the camera, but behind it. I believe that a theater community is a quintessential, a fantastic place to begin that that explorative experience in your life as being an actor and understanding how to create a character and to get into its body and get it up on feet and have a visceral experience in front of people. Because, though there's a routine to it, there's also moments of spontaneity that come about. There was a couple of moments on stage where props didn't work, stage pieces didn't move, and it really forced you in the moment to think on your feet. I did Robin Hood one time, and that was a wild play where we were doing live archery on stage. I was leaping off 6 foot things onto top of people. They were leaping onto me doing these big fight scenes. I was playing kind of the bad guy of it. And it was wild, and I was beat up after that. But like through that experience, I learned
Like
stage
literally
combat.
beat up, because if it's a case like that, that's scary.
Yeah,
Man.
I mean it's all choreographed, but I mean, imagine standing on the stage and then there's somebody up here that leaps off onto you, and then you've got to roll and get up and engage, and you do that every night, just for 2 weeks back to back, your body. And I'm in college too, so it's not like we're wearing pads or anything like that, or you just try to find your groove with it. But anyways,
it's funny
I'm
because
glad
it's funny because
was the foundation.
my sister and I a couple of years ago we saw a musical of the movie Elf, and they changed
Oh
a
wow,
lot of that film for the stage production. They took
sure,
out our particular favorite scene, which is where Buddy comes into his dad's meeting, and there's a dwarf at the head, and he calls him an
yeah,
F,
at the end of the table.
and he beats the crap out of him. They changed that, and I thought, well, that's disappointing, but now I get it. It's hard doing that on stage every night because you might get hurt.
Oh yeah, yeah. Did they keep the snowball part in there where he's rapid firing in Central Park?
They did
I love
not.
that part where he's going after the kids. That's a
Mm.
tough one to replicate.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, yeah, that's kind of where the whole experience got going for me. And then, jump to New York City. And here you are in the Big Apple, from the Mini Apple to the Big Apple. And now you're with the absolute top of the best of the best. And so I did begin doing more, a little bit of stage work, some off Broadway stuff here and there. Eventually got my equity card and all those types of things. But, ironically, it really was, for some reason, I just started, once I got into doing commercials, and I did start off doing student films for NYU. I worked with a lot of those guys in the beginning to build the reel. And so it took to being in front of the camera. And then really after that, ironically, after I got my equity card, I never really went back to the stage. I was always working from that point on in television, in films, or eventually into hosting.
That's really cool. Do you remember your first ever like on-screen TV or film role?
Yes.
Or gig?
Ironically, well, it's not much, but I can tell you, like, the very first commercial that I ever did was in college.
Mm-hmm.
It was a beer commercial for Lining Kugels. And I'd never done anything really. We hadn't done a ton of on-camera work yet. I was in a class where we were studying it, but anyways, I mean, look, it wasn't rocket science, but it was exciting and thrilling to do that and get a copy of it, and then eventually see it on television. It's a trip in the beginning, it's wild. So that's probably the very first on-camera commercial that I can recall. And then as things go on, like I said, you do a film here, you do a TV show there, and there's a bit of momentum that gets going, and it becomes very exciting, and endorphins start popping, and next thing you know, like, you have to do it. You don't know what to do if you're not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it becomes a part of you.
sword.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's the double-edged sword of being a creative, or a performer in general. Is, for some reason, at least for me, I'll just say it for me, if I'm not creating, I feel almost like purposeless. And that's not necessarily, I mean, there's many ways to find purpose in your life, don't get me wrong. But I mean, that seems to be like the calling. For some reason, it's the magnet that always draws me back, of wanting to either inhabit different characters, or I love being on set. I love working with everybody. I'm starting to slowly get also behind the camera into producing and that whole world, and which has its challenges as well. But I feel very lucky and blessed to have done some of the things that I've gotten to do. I've been really, really blessed to literally travel the world and go to some of the most remote locations on the planet. And not only do you get to see the world, but you also dive into new cultures. And it's very humbling. And to also, be doing what you love is a true gift. So I never take it for granted. And I'm thankful for that.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So was your first ever like regular role on a show in One Life to Live?
Interesting. I guess that's probably when it comes to like doing recurring characters. I originally started off when I was still living in New York City. I created a character called Dr. Michael McBain, which was this white
Oh.
collar. Well, ironically, it was a way to bring back an actor named uh, Nathaniel Marston. Unfortunately, he has passed away years ago, but Nathaniel was he was a wonderful guy. Matt Hart, the size of Texas. He had his demons, and he, would get on the show. He'd get fired. The fans really loved Nathaniel, and the fans really brought him back. But he had been let go a few times, and they were trying to figure out how the heck do we bring him back and make it make sense. Well, they decided to. His character was given this ultimatum that if he could come back to Earth through someone else's body and perform 3 good deeds, he would then reincarnate and be back. So there was me that came in, this doctor who was soulless and needed a soul. And he had this guardian angel that would direct him. And sometimes Nathaniel would come up and whisper things in my ear, so I do good deeds. And every time like he would look in the mirror, you'd see me, but it would be him. Anyway, so we started doing that and doing that and doing that. And then eventually, gosh, I don't know how many episodes we did for that character, but it was enough to bring him back. So I physically was not needed necessarily anymore. So then I went away, and eventually I moved out to Los Angeles. And a month after relocating from New York to Los Angeles, I had an audition for a series regular on One Life to Live. So then I had to go back and I had to screen test for One Life to Live for a new character. Well, it went really well and felt good, and everything was like, oh yeah, this is going to happen. But it turned out that John Brotherton ended up getting the role. And so they said, look, he's going to get the series regular role, but we'd like to offer you a recurring role. And I said, okay, well, I've already been on the show. So they're like, this is going to be a guy named Chuck Wilson III, and he's a Texas ranch hand. So I'm like, okay. So after being in Los Angeles for not only 4 weeks, I had to come back to New York, and I began that whole experience. But there's another example where it became more of a recurring situation, and it stemmed from Dr. Michael McBain. And then they ended up trying to bring Dr. Michael McBain multiple times, and 2 other actors played that role, and it went on and on and on. So it was kind of wild, but that's probably the very first recurring character of repetition that I was doing on television.
And for any listeners who don't know, this John Brotherton fellow that Brandon mentioned later became a regular on the Netflix series Fuller House as Dr.
Absolutely.
Matt Harmon. As soon as you said John Brotherton, I just pictured Fuller House in my head. I was like, I know that name. Yep. Oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah, John's amazing, fantastic actor, and I haven't seen him for a while. He's out here. He's in LA. I think so. It's been a minute, but yeah, he's got a beautiful family and does fantastic work. And we have a lot of, obviously, after a while, if you do this, you cultivate a lot of mutual friends. So we do have a lot of mutual friends, and I hope he's doing well and wish him the best.
Hi, John, if you're listening.
Hi, John.
So what was that like to appear on a soap opera? Because I've interviewed people who have been on soap operas before, like my last guest, Rachel Kimsey. She was on Young and the Restless, Days of Our Lives. I interviewed somebody who was a regular on General Hospital. Her name is Senta Moses, who also was one of the kids on Home Alone. And when I tell my friends, I interviewed one of the kids from Home Alone, nobody believes me. I'm like, it's on the internet. Look it up. So what was that like to have a regular role on a show like One Life to Live?
Well, first of all, if you ever have the opportunity to recur, or you keep getting pulled back to a show, that's the it's a dream. That's what we're working for, is the consistency, right? So you get to do what you love and you get paid. And you're not, I mean, full disclosure, when I was in New York, I had duct tape in my shoes, I had pins in my jacket, I scraped $10. I I did whatever I could try to do to survive, and that's part of that process, I think, which gave me a really strong drive. But anyways, so once you get a recurring role on a soap opera, I had a lot of, I had judgment about it. I didn't think it was acting. I had this whole thing of like, you ever see a soap opera? Oh, these actors are blah, blah. Well, it turns out that once you actually get on set and you realize what some of these series regulars have to do, they're banging out 60 pages a day. And I'm not joking. Like, that's insane. So the amount of comprehension retention that's got to come in, of memorizing. Like, look, we had scripts hidden everywhere. And a lot of times, if you're recurring, you don't get a lot of takes. And so that's what people have to understand of how fast it moves, is that you're getting one take, maybe two takes. It's not like we got a lot of time to go there and flesh out this and do this. It's like, hit your mark, say this line, do this thing, and get out. And so it's a tremendous learning experience. And it really, really sharpened my memorization skills and ability to make specific choices in the moment, be pro, learn your angles, learn how to hit your marks. And you're really there to support not only the storyline, but you're also there to support your series regulars, because these are the big people that they're all tuning in to look for. And I don't want their days to go any longer either. So, after a while, you start to get your rhythm, you start to feel confident. And, you're like, oh yeah, now I got it. Like, I can do this. And that's a really wonderful moment. And that just goes on to any other television show that you start to be a part of, whether it be a drama or sitcom or whatever, is once you start to get on set and you get that, that flow, and you're feeling confident, it's the sweet spot. And that's where you long to be. So I'd never, ever knock soap actors, at all. And after, that whole experience too, I was like, wow, I gained a lot of respect for them and how hard they really do have to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I worked on a drama show this summer, and like with soap operas, because like my mom's a big watcher of General Hospital, and that's one that airs every day. I mean, on the shows I've worked on a drama show, I've worked on a horror show. I only ever did one sitcom. There's not much comedy stuff that shoots around here, but we do get a lot of dramas and a lot of horror stuff. Yeah. I've done a little bit of that. And I worked on a show called From. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's on MGM Plus. It's like the biggest.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like the biggest
doing really well right
in the
now.
World. Oh yeah, I worked on one season of it. And that was done kind of like you do one episode each week. And because of how intense the filming is, on the drama show that I worked on this past summer, I was only there for just a few days, but like I was asked to come in Monday, Tuesday of that week, because that's what they needed from me when it came to continuity. So it was like, okay, this is what this is a part of the episode that we're going to be filming where we need this group of people. And so like, I kind of figured in my head, okay, well, that's your episode that week then. And what needs to get done needs to get done. But with soap operas, like, because you're pumping out new episodes to air every day, oh my God, I just can't imagine the shooting schedule on it.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, a lot of the soap opera stuff, at least when I was doing it, is all shot out of order. So what does that mean? That means that
most of From was shot out of order too.
Well, like, my point is like, say a Monday to Friday week, you could shoot episodes 134, 168, and 179 on Monday. And then on Wednesday, you're going to shoot episode, I don't know, 52, 74, and blah, blah. Anyways, they're all shot up, but you still get paid for that episode each day. Yeah. Some of these guys. So then if you start to do the math, your mind gets blown as to what some of these series regulars are making. But Yeah, because of however, like they don't want to change the set. So we're gonna shoot this in this part, and then we're gonna go over here. We're gonna do this thing. So it's really shot all over the place. You just really got to understand your character. You have to understand where the storyline is going and bob and weave. But then if you want to transition to say doing a sitcom or doing a Disney show, doing Hannah Montana or doing Shake It Up. That was our we would do a Monday table read for Shake It Up. We would do rehearsals Tuesday and Wednesday, followed by a run through on Thursday for producers. No, yeah. When Thursday would be like, and then each day you're getting a different script at the end of the day as the writers are switching things around. And then usually Friday was shoot day. And so
Okay.
you'd pre-tape some stuff during the day, or otherwise you'd go live. And so that was a pretty good cycle that you would have going, and that wasn't too bad. But again, if you're doing a sitcom, it's usually multi-camera,
Oh yeah.
so it's super important that you hit your marks and you're repeating that action for continuity as you spoke of, so it all clicks and cuts right. Again, just really great learning experience. And then when you get to do that live audience, it's kind of like just doing live theater again. And it's fun to have a real, again, visceral feedback to what you're doing, and fun moments happen and things go sideways. And sometimes it works and they keep it in the episode. And then sometimes, well, let's go back and redo it.
Yeah,
But it's always
I went to a live taping a couple of weeks ago, and the point of the live taping was they hadn't really finalized everything yet, but they wanted to see what jokes worked. Like, it was a political satire show that we have here. It's one of the only comedy shows that we have in Nova Scotia.
Sure. Yeah, they're testing out new jokes.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought up the Disney Channel stuff, because that was going to be my next question. What was it like to appear on Hannah Montana?
It was really, really fun. And going back to how that kind of thing came about was when I was back in New York, and this is pretty wild too, kind of a synchronistic moment. Last week, the theatrical agency that I'm with, Eris Talent Agency, they did this huge agency Zoom with
Ooh.
a super big casting director named Howard Meltzer.
Mm-hmm.
And Howard is known for casting Hannah Montana and Shake It Up and Bunked and like some huge legacy type stuff. And unfortunately, Carol Goldwasser, who was his partner at the time for casting, she just passed last week, so it was kind of a bummer. But Howard and I originally met in New York City for a casting house called Stuart Howard. And then when eventually I came out to Los Angeles, and he had moved to Los Angeles before I did, but Howard was one of the first casting directors theatrically that I had met when I got out here. And it was my very first audition for Disney Channel. Honestly, it was the very first time I ever did it. And you spoke earlier about, being a host, but also playing a host. And I'll try to keep on track here, but so my hosting career, when that started, I never wanted to be a host. I didn't pursue to be a host. I just sort of fell into it, and it just took off. And when I got the audition to do the character of Brian Winters for Hannah Montana, I was working on a show at the time in Los Angeles. I was working on an HGTV show called Get Out, Way Out. And I got the audition, and I literally left set from where we were shooting. I wasn't really taking it all that seriously. I mean, I was, but I was in that place where I was kind of comfortable, and I was like, okay, cool. Well, in that comfortability, I was still very new in Los Angeles, and I knew I had a long road ahead. And I went into audition, and there was Howard, and I'm like, oh wow, hey Howard, how's it going? Great to see you, man. It's been years, and blah blah blah. And he's like, oh, great to see you too. Let's begin. And I just kind of took what I usually do sort of as a host in those situations and really elevated. At the time, and probably still is, Disney Channel stuff is very heightened. The energy is pumped, and it's a little over exaggerated at times.
But did you know that your character was going to be a host?
Yes.
Okay.
I was auditioning for the character originated as the host of this show called Singing with the Stars. Mm-hmm. And so it was a Ryan Seacrest-esque type American Idol spinoff type thing. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so I did it, and Howard was like, oh my God, grabbed me, he pulled me into the producer's office and he said, do that again. And so I did it again for the producers and they were like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I left. And then I think the next day I got the call that I got the role. But what was really fun about it, Fred Savage was the director of that from the Wonder Years and everything else he's gone on to do. He was, it was really cool to work with Fred. He's a really amazing, generous guy. And what was the most fun is they really just gave me permission to just go for it. So I took a lot of crazy risks and they seemed to like it. And that is an important thing about being a guest star on any show, be it drama, be it procedural, anything. If you're a guest star, you have to be you got to grab that steering wheel and drive. You've got to be really, really locked into your character, and you can't be kind of wishy-washy about, well, did that work? What do you guys think about that? It's like you come in and you know exactly what's happening. And that kind of confidence is super, super important. So that's where, having a fun set. If the set's fun, it just kind of makes your shoulders drop a bit. And then after that, again, I just kept doing that as far as the character became recurring, did a few more episodes, had some fun with Miley. It's so surreal looking back now. Like there'll be moments where I'd come to rehearsal and there'd be these three dudes just sitting there hanging out. And I'm like, what's up? Hey man, what's up? What are you guys doing here? Oh, we're the Jonas Brothers. Who? We're called the Jonas Brothers. Oh, all right. Nice to meet you.
I am a huge fan of the Jonas Brothers.
You know, like cool. Just weird, like they hadn't popped yet.
Right.
But Miley was hanging with them. And so like you just have these weird, surreal moments. And Disney is very powerful. Like if they want to, they will make you a star.
Yeah, so, I mean, look at Sabrina Carpenter these days. She started on Girl Meets World. I was talking to an actor named Jim Meskimen. I don't know if you know Jim. He's a master impressionist. He's been on many shows. And we were talking about, you look at a lot of these stars who started on something like Disney Channel or on Nickelodeon who now like are taking over the world. And he's like, yeah, I worked on Even Stevens with Shia LaBeouf when he was a bratty little kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my friends who became a very successful casting director, still is, Sig D. Miguel in New York City. He casted Shia in Holes, which was one of Shia's kind of big breakout roles. And I remember we were out having coffee and he's like, yeah, this movie's turning out really, really good, but you got to keep an eye on Shia. Like this kid's doing some really, really interesting, cool work. He's going to be a huge star. And I was like, all right, so that's pretty wild. It is cool to see the arc of somebody. I mean, look at Zendaya right now. It's like, what?
I was thinking about that one. Yeah.
I knew that she was immensely talented and everything, but the level at which she has taken over is pretty wild. And I couldn't be more excited and happy for her.
Mm. When I announced on Nostalgia Talk social media, you guys know where to go, Facebook, Twitter, links are in the description. So when I announced on Nostalgia Talk social media that I was going to be talking to you, I got this text from my friend Katie. Hi, Katie, if you're listening. I just saw her a couple weeks ago. We went out with a couple of other people from high school. And cool. She said to me, this guy that you're talking to, R. Brandon Johnson, because I listed, he was on Shake It Up. He was on Hannah Montana. And in brackets, I wrote the character names. And so she's like, I recognize the picture. And I'm picturing a very core memory from Hannah Montana for me. The scene where Jake says, while Miley is watching TV, that he loves her. And if this is the guy that I think it is, he's the guy that just kind of reacted like, ooh. And I said to her, yeah, that's the guy. That is a core memory for me. So shout out to Katie if you're listening.
That's so funny.
Mm-hmm.
That is so funny. That moment was the director saying, Brandon, give me a shocked surprise thing of like, okay, another one. Oh, another one. And then that's where he's like, she said something spicy. And it was like, ooh. And that's where all of those kinds of things came from, they were just rapid fire. Again, something else new.
Mm-hmm.
something else.
And of
Give me
course,
something
Miley
else.
kept rewinding the TV. So,
Well,
so
it's
that
turned
so
into
yeah, I
like
can
a
see why it sticks in people's minds because she kept
it's
playing it
turned
over and
into
over.
like a meme. It's turned into like a meme and like a GIF and or a GIF or whatever the hell you call it. Yeah, that was a kind of a crazy funny moment. There are those times where they stick with you. So yep, that was
Hmm.
me.
It's awesome. So you were talking a little bit about having
Yeah.
fun with Miley, because in part two of that episode, she's trying to make Jake break up with her by seeming weird. What was Miley? What was she like? Like, what was her personality like?
Miley's a firecracker and she's exactly what you see. Um, Miley is immensely talented. I mean, she had it then, and boy, does she still have it now.
Oh
I've
yeah.
seen her sing in person recently. One of my old roommates actually managed her for a while. Um, you know, but anyways, but back then, she was still very wild and precocious. Very much her character. She was sweet. Um, there was there's certainly an age gap, an age difference. So it's not like we hung out and stuff, but I'd see her around and it just took off. It just took off and she kept going. And then she really debuted her incredible. She took that singing to a whole other level, and it's amazing what she's done with that. And she's just formed an incredible career.
Mhm. I watched her get honored at the Disney Legends this year, and
Sure.
oh my god, just
D23.
oh yeah, I went to D23 in person one year. She was
Oh,
not
cool.
there. Zendaya
Yeah.
was. I didn't see
Yeah.
her. Um, and but like watching Miley just talk about her career in such an
Hmm.
honest way, because like with Disney in particular, there are, and I've heard Selena Gomez talk about this, there are limitations to what they want you to do in public because children are watching these shows. But
Thousand
when you
percent.
but when you grow up, it's a case of okay, well, I have a reputation. A lot of these kids that watch me on these shows, they're now grown up, and they're getting into different things. Maybe there's a way that I can remind them of what they saw with me, like Sabrina Carpenter. Like, she was on Girl Meets World. Now she's making like contemporary R&B stuff. And same with Selena Gomez, like her music is and same with and Demi Lovato as well, and Miley Cyrus. I'm of course thinking of one particular Miley Cyrus album. I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, like for some people, they see people like Miley Cyrus and Sabrina Carpenter, Selena Gomez, and even as an adult, like they still think of them as immensely talented. They're just more grown up now. And like you were talking about the Jonas
Yeah.
Brothers, like when they got back together, I listened to that new album, the Happiness Begins album, and I'm like, this is the best Jonas Brothers I've ever listened to, because they're more grown
Sure.
up now. They don't
Yeah.
have to rely on young kids to buy their albums, but people know who
Yeah.
they are.
Yes. We have to remember that everybody grows up and evolves.
Yeah.
And as long as you keep creating and strengthening your creative muscle, you're going to get better and better and better at it. So it would be very strange if we began to see an adult that's still thinking they're 13 years old and didn't, evolve past that. They they have at that time when you're very young and you're being exposed on a global level, on an international level, you are really, you go back to core memories and stuff like that, and you have that impact on people. But you do grow and you do evolve, and you have to at some point say, okay, I was really thankful and grateful that I got to do that, and I'm going to try something new now. And if you
Right.
stay, you have a finite amount of time as these kids are growing up and they're going through puberty and they're changing, and they got to go through all of this stuff in front of everybody, let alone the incredible amounts of pressure that are put on these kids. Look, I've been on Hannah Montana, Shake It Up, Good Luck Charlie. I've been on all of those sets. I know what all of those kids are going through, and they're doing, some of them are still having to be homeschooled on set. They're doing full rehearsals. They're the leads, so they got the most lines. And then some of those have to do choreography, there's dance rehearsals they've got to go to. Oh, and then after that, you're going to get pulled out to do press. And then you're going to get pulled out to go to this movie premiere. Oh, and then after that,
It
it's
never
full
stops.
on.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. And so if contractually you are obligated, you got to be careful what you wish for in that regard. And that is why a lot of these kids get so fried and so burnt out. They they lose they lose their childhood to a certain degree. They have said, I'm going to do this. And look, I understand when those moments come, those opportunities come, you got to seize them. And
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons why, I have a son now, and I don't push him in front of the camera. He's been asked thousands of times to do this and that and blah, 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 but he doesn't burn for it. He doesn't like really totally want to do it. And candidly, I'm okay with that. I want him to have a childhood and explore all the fun things that you can do instead of being stuck on a set sometimes. And I also know some of the, unfortunately, some of the horrible things that do go down in an industry. So I'm hyper vigilant about protecting him. But at the same time, I think if you've got a good team around you, what you can do is just unbelievable. And again, I've seen it. I've seen some stars go one route, and then I've seen others go the other. And that is it's like pulling a jackpot wheel. It spins, and sometimes you hit it, sometimes you don't. But I do believe that it is imperative that you work toward finding balance in your life. Find the things that bring you joy, lean into that, find a hobby, and then also, celebrate the amazing thing of the amazing part of being an actor on a show, and let alone if it hits big, lucky you. But understand that it doesn't define who you are. You're much
Right.
more than some character on a television show. We're not curing cancer. But I think from a place of service, if I can come from a place of service, if I can entertain you, if I can make you laugh, if I can bring joy into your life, I am happy to do so. That's very fulfilling and satisfying for me. So those are my words of wisdom for anybody wanting to leap in at a very early age. Just find balance in your life.
Hmm. So, with Shake It Up, like I said in the intro, both Brian Winters and Gary Wilde were television hosts. Of course, Gary Wilde was more of the center of the root of the show within a show, Shake It Up Chicago. So we saw a lot
Right.
more of him in a lot of episodes.
Yep.
In a way, you were like semi main character, because without Gary
Yes.
Wilde, yeah. I mean, CC and Rocky, they were dancers on this Shake It Up show that Gary was the host of, and it was the center of the whole series. How did it come about?
Yeah. Well, it's a crazy story,
Okay.
and I'll blast through it as fast as I can. So I had gone in and I had auditioned for. So the original Gary Wilde was an older gentleman. They did a pilot. Great actor. I saw the pilot. He did great. But I don't know if he tested as well or whatever. So they went to recast. So then I went into audition, and there was this other dude that went in. He went in front of me. Now this guy, he was tiny, like physically, like 5'3", 5'4". And they wanted the character to almost have this Napoleon complex, right? Which I get the angle. It's kind of funny. And he went in, and they were cracking up, and they're like, so then I went in. They laughed, but they didn't laugh so much. And I was like, So anyways, I left. And about a week went by, and it was a Thursday night. And I got a call at around 5 p.m. And it was my agent saying, okay, we need you down at Los Angeles Center Studios. You're going in for an emergency producer session for the role of Gary Wilde. Here are the sides. Learn them. We need you there by 6:30. Okay, so I start racing down the 101, going downtown. I'm driving and I'm learning the line. What do I say? Okay, and I'm driving. And so it turns out that this dude, he actually got the role of Gary Wilde, but didn't have a lot of experience, and he was a bit green. So he was on set doing this stuff, but it can be very intimidating when you're there and there's 60 people behind the camera and you've got all these cameras and lights and all that. And so anyways, it wasn't working. So I got there, and sure enough, there's Howard Meltzer again. And Howard's like, hey, okay, so do this, hit these beats, blah, 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 and then I'm going to bring you in. Okay, cool. I did it, hit the beats. Oh, they're laughing again. Great, great. So I leave. Thanks for seeing me. And out I go. I go home, get home around 7:30. I'm like, I'm just going to go to the gym. Phone didn't ring, so whatever. I get out of the gym, voicemail's blowing up. It's not only Howard, it's also my agent saying, okay, so we need you on set tomorrow morning by 7 a.m. You're going to be doing a full episode and full network run through for everybody. And you also have to reserve the next 13 weeks of your life. And we need an answer now. Okay. Now, at the time, I was working as a host on a show called Character Fantasy on the USA Network. And I was working with Jeannie Mai at the time. And I had 2 episodes left to shoot for that season. So I didn't know what to do. So that was with the hosting agent that was still in New York City. But my theatrical agent is here in Los Angeles. And it's like, at this point, it's like 10 p.m. at night. And I'm like, I don't know. Oh my God, I don't know what to do. So I don't sleep. And I stay up pretty much the whole night. I'm stressing out. But I get down there and I get through the run through and I do it and we film it. And then I leave and they're like, okay, cool. Come back Monday. Nobody tells me I have the job or what's going on. I still don't know. So long story short, they just keep bringing me back. And to your point about being a recurring or series regular, the loophole was if they hired me as recurring, they don't have to pay me as much.
Right.
But they can keep bringing me back. And so they kind of used me as a series regular to drive the show. And it wasn't until the 28th episode when I asked, do I have the job? Oh, yeah. Nobody ever told me I got the job. It wasn't until the 20th episode. Rob Lauderstein finally told me, the producer, I got the job. So that's kind of a crazy story about how that whole thing came about. It was a recast from the original dude. And then I stepped in, and I think, again, they saw what I was doing back with Brian Winters, and then they said, just refine them a little bit more. And you're also going to be kind of like this father figure. You're going to be the boss, the CEO of Shake It Up Chicago. You're driving it. So it was important that I was very grounded and allowed, was sort of like this pole star that all these funny little kid characters would interact around. And yeah, I mean, it was a wild time in my life. And thanks to Disney
Gary
Plus,
Wilde's wild time.
Yeah, right. Exactly. The Wild Bunch. And so thanks to Disney Plus over the last few years, there's been a bit kind of a resurgence, and it's been a real trip to see some of my friends that have kids now. They're like, hey, dude, my daughter is, watching you here, or I'll get a ping like, hey, can you record this video for my friend? Or, it's kind of funny.
Kind of like the text I got from my friend when I announced this, that she recognized you.
Right.
So with
Crazy.
Shake It Up, we were talking about Zendaya, and of course, both of those girls, Bella Thorne and Zendaya, they've both gone on to do incredible things. I've seen Bella Thorne in a lot of movies. I saw her in one with Adam Sandler called Blended, and I was like, oh my God, it's Cece from Shake It Up. But with Zendaya in particular, like, she's gone on to become a massive star. I mean, I'm of course thinking about Dune and Spider-Man, which both have, Spider-Man especially cemented her as a real household name.
That was the big one.
That was a big one outside of Disney. Yeah, 'cause she was already starring on Casey Undercover after Shake It Up. And one of my previous guests, James McCauley, who was a regular on That's So Raven, made an appearance on Casey Undercover. And I asked him about working with Zendaya, and he said he brought his daughters to the set of that because they were big Zendaya fans. And he described Zendaya as very, very professional. What was she like for you to work with?
Working with Zendaya in the beginning was fine in the sense that she didn't have a ton of experience prior to this. She was doing Shakespeare up in the Bay Area. but she nailed the character. She could sing, dance, and act. She was that triple threat, and she was a great partner to Bella as well. And I just was always impressed at how focused she was, how professional she was. And there's somebody that had a really, really great team around her. And, it's come out now, but at the time it was kept under wraps that unfortunately her mother and father were going through a divorce
Oh,
during that
wow.
whole first season. And nobody could say a word. And I mean, I can't fathom how challenging that must have been for her and to keep it together. And both Kazimbe, her father, Claire, her mother, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. I love them, and they love her back, and somehow that's it's she's over the years, she tries to bring them into the fold when she can. Now she's much older and she has her own independent life, uh but Z was always friendly, sweet, down to earth. Like there's the goofy side that we see of her a lot. And that's the side that I remember of her. That's the side that I love. I mean, she has worked with the greatest directors, the greatest actors on the planet at this point, and she's she's just getting started, man. She's a massive global brand ambassador. It's incredible. But yeah, I think when she was going from Shake It Up into Casey Undercover, she really did, want to go on to do other things. And I can recall too, same with Bella, is that every day there'd be massive directors showing up on set wanting to meet with the girls to discuss various projects. And the girls were locked into contracts and they couldn't get out. I remember walking back and forth between a table read and going to set. And I'm looking behind me and I'm like, that's J.J. Abrams. And he was there to like meet with Bella about, offer her some, a role. Imagine J.J. Abrams like, I want you as the lead in my film. Sorry, I can't. I'm on a Disney show. So, like it's rough like that. There's so many opportunities that came, and you'll have this conversation with other Disney actors on your podcast where you have these golden handcuffs. You're kind of stuck there for a while. And it's why these kids just want to, when they get done, they want to break out, they want to get out. And I think Zendaya was in a point where I don't know the whole story behind, Casey Undercover and all that kind of stuff. But I know that I'm sure in her heart, she was ready to leave. And she said, okay, I'll bang out 3 more seasons, but I want to be I want to be on Spider-Man,
Mhm.
and so Tony O'Dell, who was a big dialect coach and helped the girls with everything and became a really good friend of mine. Tony was telling me years back about how he was coaching Zendaya for that Spider-Man role and how she was working so hard. So an incredible payoff once she finally got the role. And after that, she never looked back. That was a big deal. So super happy for her.
Mm. Talking about Disney stars who have kind of come and go, one of my very, very favorite episodes of Shake It Up was featured a guest appearance from going back to what I was saying about knowing James McCauley from That's So Raven with Annalisa Vanderpool, where she and where she was a previous dance. I forget the character's name, but where she was a previous dancer on Shake It Up Chicago. And had a best friend on that show she was close with in a way that Cece and Rocky were, but time had gone on and they didn't agree with each other anymore and were kind of forced to get together. And through watching Rocky and Cece kind of reconciled and worked out their differences. It's so funny. I'm talking to James McCauley, who did Raven regularly and then was on Casey Undercover working with Zendaya. And I'm talking to you, who worked regularly with Zendaya and had a Raven star on Shake It Up. What was it like to have Annalisa Vanderpool on Shake It Up?
Well, it's always super cool because you never really know who's going to pop up. Who's going to be on there that guest star? Like there's the thing where you're on the show and you're doing it and you're just okay. Another episode comes in. There's a new guest star or a new co-star or whatever, but you don't know who they're going to cast, and you don't find out until the table read. So it's really cool to see people that have been on various other shows, other Disney shows, come on, and then they get to play. I have a fond memory too of a really good dear friend of mine who he and I used to study. We were in a private acting class in New York City under Alan Savage. My buddy Philip Rodriguez, who's going on like he's guest stars and series regular and everything. He's everywhere. But he surprised me one day showing up, and he had a guest star on Shake It Up, and he didn't tell me. So moments like that are super, super awesome. And it's always a gift when you get to work with your friends and you have this kind of nostalgic, melancholy moment of like, remember when, and here we are. And it's awesome. So it's always really cool to have fresh faces, but it's always special to have those that have a bit more of a history. And certainly if they got the Disney history, it just makes the episode that much more special.
As soon as you said that, I thought about another favorite episode of mine that had a previous Disney guest. It was, and I can't remember if you were on it or not. It's been, I watched a little bit of Shake It Up getting ready for this, but it was mostly episodes that I knew for a fact you were on, like where I can hear Gary talking in my head. And I'm like, okay, what episode was that from? And I have to really go back to Disney Plus and think really hard.
Right.
But one that I really love that had a former, well, I don't want to say former, that had a Disney star on it, because he later went on to reprise his role on Boy Meets World. Sorry, no, reprise his role from Boy Meets World on Girl Meets World was Ben Savage. In an episode where he was a reviewer online who gave Shake It Up Chicago some negative reviews, and Rocky and Cece were really pissed off by that. And rather than just let it go, because reviewers are going to have their opinions and they're like, there's nothing wrong with publicizing them, they just harassed him to no end.
Yeah, that's what you do. They trolled him. They were trolling before troll was hot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was kind of that's crazy too, to go from Ben and then having worked earlier with Fred.
I was thinking about that. Yeah.
Full circle moment there. And to your point too, going into the third season, that got crazy because in the intro that you were saying before we really got into this whole thing, you mentioned a show 72 Hours that I was hosting for TNT. And that was a kind of a crazy moment where I had to get on the phone with the producers and be like, look, guys, I'm about to launch the unscripted division with The Rock for TNT. There's a massive adventure show that we travel the world for 2.5 months straight. It's going to completely pull me out of the third season, but I will be back at time to do a few more episodes on the back end. So things got really, really turned upside down. And then they had to recast my role for a minute. If you watch third season, you'll see this other guy comes in and they made up this whole other storyline of why I had to go away. And then when they found out
what I remember was that the theater had burned down and Gary was
burned down, a faulty
tanning
bed.
Yeah.
Faulty tanning bed. Yeah. And so that was, that was bittersweet, but it was one of those moments where I had to take it. And yeah, it definitely ruffled some feathers. I'll put it that way. Some people were not happy about that. And I understand, but that was another moment too, where I was like, I've done a lot of Disney stuff and it's time for me to
move on.
Not only move on, but like the show was epic. We went to the Asawa Islands in Fiji, 3 hours past where they filmed the movie Castaway. I mean, we were way out there. We went to Tasmania, New Zealand, where they shot The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. We were in Lanai in Hawaii. We were in New Mexico. We were like, it was nuts. It was crazy. But
I was gonna ask about that, like traveling the world for a show like that. I mean, from what I've never actually watched it. I'm gonna confess, I didn't even know it existed until I started doing my research for this. And when I read that you hosted it, I thought to myself, oh my God, he's perfect for that, because he played 2 TV hosts on Disney Channel. I mean, he's got some hosting experience at least. I kind of pictured it because my sister and my dad love Survivor. So to me, it sounded a lot like Survivor.
Yeah, it has those elements. We worked with the people from Survivor, Amazing Race, and Fear Factor. We essentially it was a show that Howard Schultz, who was the president and CEO of Lighthearted Entertainment at the time, unfortunately, he has passed, but he had this show. It was originally called Fetch. And for years, He wanted to do it, but everybody said it's impossible. There's no way you guys can do this show. It's like shooting a Ridley Scott movie every 9 days in the most remote locations on the planet. It's impossible. But when they brought it to Michael Wright and David Eilenberg at TNT, they believed in it. And that was to get that role. I had like 5 callbacks for that. And it was over a month of auditioning just to get that role, which was crazy. But yeah, you're essentially, we would take 3 groups of 3, never had met each other. We kept them all sequestered. And then we would catapult them into this remote locations on the planet with a water bottle, a GPS, and a 2-way radio that they would communicate with me. And then I had a briefcase of $100,000. And once they landed in the starting area, they had 72 hours to find this briefcase. But they all had to reach it together. It's not like one person from their team could get it. And as I was saying, a helicopter would fly over, the line would come down. I'd say, the only thing now is you got to go get it. And off it went, and the game started. And they had to figure it out. They had to figure out how to do it. They were out in the wild. And again, logistically, to pull all this stuff off was very, very challenging, incredibly challenging. By the time we got towards the end of actually filming the 8th episode, we finally kind of got the groove. We're like, okay, we understand how to do this. And they were prepping me to sort of be the next Jeff Probst at the time. Early in my career, I met with Fox. I was going to replace Ryan Seacrest on American Idol if he never renegotiated his contract. And this happens a lot with networks. If their lead hosts decide that they don't want to come back or do it, they need to have a backup. So I would screen test for American Idol. I screen tested for First Survivor, and then also Amazing Race. And they just have to. So anyways, so I had this opportunity, to do all these things. And then you got The Rock, and he's shooting a show called The Hero, and they shot that whole thing in Panama City. They didn't have to travel. They just banged it out.
Panama City in Florida or Panama?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Panama like the Panama Canal area.
Okay, I've been there. And when I went there, a lot of people were very confused as to where I was.
Yeah. Anyway, so, but I think one of the reasons why it was very difficult for people to find the show is that when it did come out, though they did great promotion for it, they started positioning it at different times on different air dates, which made it incredibly hard for the show to get traction, and nobody knew when to tune in. And so it didn't get the reach that it needed, and unfortunately, it went away. But from start to finish, from shooting the episodes, shooting the pilot, then getting greenlit, then shooting the episodes, then editing the episodes, then them coming to air, that whole process took over a year. And then it finally comes out and it fizzles, which was really, really hard for myself and everybody, because we really thought we had a great, great show. And we had a contestant on there who gave one of the best sound bites. She said, I thought I was coming on a reality show, but it turns out this is a real reality show. Meaning, we weren't making up stuff. Like, what was happening was truly happening. And a lot of people thought it was fake or set up. And we're like, no, we're actually capturing it. So that was a pretty wild moment. And again, going back to traveling the world, doing what you love, I would have moments where I'd be stuck on some little rock in the middle of the ocean in the South Pacific by myself for hours. There are times where the responders are going down. We have no communication. They're looking for me. One of the producers and I are cracking coconuts just to stay hydrated. I don't know if they're going to find, didn't matter if you were in front of the camera or behind it, you're going to get your butt kicked. It did not matter. It definitely was grueling. And by the time that I got back home after 2.5 months on the road, I was shredded. Keep in mind, before I left, I'm doing Shake It Up in Los Angeles. I'm flying to Florida. I'm doing My Yard Goes Disney for HGTV. I'm then going up to Pennsylvania. I'm doing RV, their RV show special that they do for HGTV. And then I'm traveling around the world shooting 72 hours all at the same time. And by the time I got back, I just went, And I remember coming home and having to leap in like the next day to shoot a pilot for Fremantle or Endemol and stuff. So a thrilling, exciting time of abundance, but at the same, it came with a price.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy.
I actually was going to wrap it up with 72 hours, but it looks like we covered all the 72 hours talk.
Yeah,
But in between that, there was another Disney Channel question that I had, kind of just going back to that. I hope that that's
you got
okay.
it. Of course.
I would love to ask about the Shake It Up, Good Luck Charlie crossover.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when that was new. It was because both those shows kind of started at the same time. And like we were saying, a lot of the actors on those shows were somewhat unknown. Some of them, like Rashawn was on Camp Rock.
Yep.
Jason Dolly on Good Luck Charlie. He was on Corey in the House. I actually
Yep.
remember watching Good Luck Charlie for the first time. I loved Corey in the House because I'm a big That's So Raven fan.
For sure.
What more proof do we need for that? I interviewed one of its regulars this year. So,
Yep.
so I didn't actually connect the dots between Newt and from Corey in the House to being PJ from Good Luck Charlie. And of course, Rashawn and Jason were the only Disney stars who were in something else prior to both of those. But those shows became a hit with different stars who
They did.
Like Bridget Mendler. I mean, she was on Wizards of Waverly Place, and Bella Thorne and Zendaya, who were like completely unknown. And like I said, they started at the same time. They were both hits right away. So a crossover is, and especially with Amy being obsessed with performing, perfect for her to be on a dancing TV show. What was that crossover like?
The crossover was fun just because, well, it was very seamless in the fact that the sets were right next to each other. Again, we were shooting down at LA Center Studios, and we were stage 5, and I think they were stage 3. So we literally, or maybe we just shared it at some point when we were on a week that we weren't shooting Shake It Up, because we would usually shoot 3 weeks out of 4. So maybe it was a week where we weren't doing it. And so that was seamless, and it was fun. And again, you're working with a lot of the same people, a lot of same crew. So it just makes it really, I keep using the word seamless. It's more of like kind of an effortless thing. And I'm playing the same character as Gary Wilde on that show. So it wasn't too difficult, but it's also fun to work with new actors and get their take and their spin on things. It was super fun. And it's another example of how, Disney will continue to cross-pollinate to bring viewers into different shows. And it really just helps everybody at the end of the day, expanding and getting more eyeballs on different shows, pulling more people to it. Everybody ends up winning.
Yeah, I have a DVD of anybody remember DVDs? I have a DVD of a crossover that Disney did, and it was kind of done separately in different ways. But all together, and they did this for a couple of different things. So there's That's So Raven mixed with Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. Both those shows mixed with Hannah Montana. And then Sweet Life on Deck did Hannah Montana and Wizards of Waverly Place together.
Yep. There you go. Yeah. That's how you do it. They just cross-pollinate, man.
I love that. And it's, they haven't done anything like that in quite a long time. They did a couple of years ago with Bunked and Raven's Home, but I don't think there's been much of it lately.
I think there's going to be a new swell in 2025. I know, obviously, there's a reboot of Wizards in Waverly Place, and the lead on that is also with my agency. And I can tell you that they are going to make that girl probably like the next Zendaya. They probably are going to launch that girl to greater heights. But whether she has that platform or not, she's incredibly, immensely talented. So she's going to make her way there anyway, I'm sure.
All right. Well, listeners, you know where to look for that.
Yeah. I think Disney Channel in 2025 and on are going to try to get, there's been a lot of talk about the golden age or the golden days of Disney when it was just that pocket, and Shake It Up and all these other programs that you're talking about really encapsulate that time from like 2006 to 2012, 2013, maybe. I don't know. And I think that they're going to try to bring that back in a new way. So keep your eyes peeled in the new year for probably some new fun shows, and who knows what it'll bring, and who knows what they'll bring back too. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten success with Wizards of Waverly Place, and that coming back with Wizards Beyond, and Raven's Home as well became a massive, massive success. Yeah, it does kind of make me hopeful for a lot of, and I didn't really think much about it because, like we were saying, a lot of these people have gone on to do other things, but everybody still recognizes them because of the things that they did before. So these new things are like, oh, it's that person from that show. So yeah, it's easy to remember them.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll
Mm.
see.
Well, that's all I've got here. Before I do my little outro, is there anything you want to say?
Well, first off, just thanks so much for having me on as a guest. This has been really fun, and it's been fun to go down this nostalgic road of Disney and where it all kind of began. I would say, if you can, I've got a new film out called Protocol 7 that deals, based on true events, deals with pharmaceutical fraud and a lot of these stuff. And it's more of a drama, though. I won't say it's very comedy. It's pretty intense in
Okay.
that regard. But we've got a great cast. We got Eric Roberts, we got Matthew Marsden, Rachel Whittle. A lot of great things are happening with that. So it's on streaming platforms. It's on Yow TV. It's also on Apple TV, Google TV, YouTube TV. Check that out if you can. And I think soon, definitely in 2025, it'll come to probably the bigger streamers. But that's sort of the new thing. And then I'm just in the midst of trying to produce some other films, and hopefully we'll get a green light
Nice.
and get that going in 2025 as well. So hopefully you'll be seeing more of me in the new year.
Well, I wish you a lot of luck with that. And to the listeners, I do have some closing remarks. As I said at the start, this is the 2024 Nostalgia Talk finale. Like, this is the last interview of this calendar year. Thank you.
Well
This is
done.
the Thank you. This is the last interview of the year that I'm going to do. There are some planned for 2025. When I say last one I'm going to do, I just mean for this calendar year. I'm coming back, baby. Come on.
Let's go.
Yeah. So this has been, like, in my own personal life, it's been an interesting year. A lot has happened. I've lost friends, as I mentioned in the intro, which that's been tough. It's not a fun thing. But at the same time, one of my biggest dreams actually came true this year. I've always wanted to work in my film career on a feature film. And because of one of my really good friends from college, I got that chance to. Thank you to him. But with Nostalgia Talk in particular, we've had a lot of really cool people on this show, and we've had a lot of big milestones. The first interview I did this year was with Peter Linz. You guys know Peter. For the Muppets, he's Walter, Statler, Robin the Frog, Link Hogthrob, Lips, Tutter on Bear in the Big Blue House. He was on Between the Lions as Theo, and on Sesame Street, he's Ernie, and my favorite, Harry Monster. So first of all, it was so nice to have Peter on this show to kick off the year, because like Peter and I, like, we met at D23. We became incredibly close friends after that. And so to finally get him on this show was very nice. And apparently everyone else really enjoyed it, because we broke a really, really big record, not to toot my own horn or anything, but that became my fastest viewed Nostalgia Talk ever. 1,000 views in a solid week. That has never happened before. I try really hard not to brag about it, but when I saw that, I was actually really, really impressed. And not only that, but we also made it this year. I've been doing this show for 4 years, and we made it this year to episode number 100. 100 is not, there aren't many shows in the world that make it to 100 episodes. So when that
You're going into
happens,
syndication now, James. You're going to make the big bucks.
so when that happens, it's a huge milestone. So again, big thank you also to Tyler Bunch, another Bear in the Big Blue House and Muppet puppeteer, for coming on for episode number 100. And in general, I'm just pulling out my phone. I have a list of the names of the guests I've had this year on my phone, but every time I do this, I worry that I'm going to forget about somebody. So I had to keep track. So for 2024, I would like to give a big thank you to Peter Linz, Michael Bell, Caitlin Robrock, Andy Yerkes, James Godwin, David Newell, Belinda Ward, Nikki Smedley, Kenny James, Tanya Gunati, Chris Thomas Hayes, James McCauley, Corey Burton, Richard Termini, Ken Scarborough, Jim Meskimen, Andy Hayward, Annie Evans, Denise Oliver, J. Paul Zimmerman, Katie Griffin, Earl Fisher, Tyler Bunch, Rachel Kimsey, and of course, R. Brandon Johnson. To all, I don't know how many people this is, but to all of you guys, thank you so much for coming on Nostalgia Talk this year and sharing your nostalgic stories with me and with you. And I also can't forget to give credit to my friends Dennis Scott for helping me connect with David Newell. You guys remember David, of course, Mr. McFeely from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and Andy Yerkes for helping me get in touch with Ken Scarborough. All these people that come on Nostalgia Talk the last 4 years, these are my friends. They're your friends. We're all in this together. We're all listening to these people talk. These are the projects that we love. These are the things that we love. And, you know, we all get taken back in time. We got these time machines in our mind when these people talk to us. It's like, oh, yeah, I remember watching all of this stuff. And I can't forget to thank you guys, the listeners, for coming back all this time, especially this year, to listen to all of this. So to wrap it up, I've got one more Nostalgia Talk Christmas bonus coming out for the year. And then I'll be back in 2025. So to all of you guys, I hope you have a great holiday season, whatever it is you celebrate. Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. If you're a Seinfeld fan, maybe you celebrate Festivus. Who knows? So to all of you guys, have a great holiday, and I'll see you in 2025. Peace out.
Hey, James. Michael Goff here. So, 100 episodes of Nostalgia Talk. That is awesome. Apparently, a lot of people have stayed a while and listened. Congratulations. And hey, here's to the next 100. Until then, farewell, my friend.
Hi, James. This is Dennis Scott, wishing you a very happy 100th episode. You are the king of nostalgia, and I so enjoyed being on your show and the things we got to talk about, like Mr. Rogers and Betty White, and of course, my favorite, the Beatles. Here's Sir Paul. Anyway, keep up the great work, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. We love you. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Congratulations, Nostalgia Talk, for 100 episodes!